throw up your hands, and I will call on you. Right over here.
The obvious question. Who killed Asmodeus?
And someone always asks who killed Asmodeus. Read and find out. It will be in the books. The reason being, before he passed away, Robert Jordan had, after much weight and demand by fans, had agreed that he would include it in the books. And he left a note for me to do so. And Harry has decided which of the 3 books it goes in. And I was about to tell people which of the 3 books it was in, but that was at Jordan Con last year, and she actually leaned over as I was about to say it and said, read and find out. A sense of glee and joy. So I cannot tell you which book it will be in, but it will be in one of the books. Other questions? Right here.
Related to that, I saw several quotes where Robert Jordan said that the clues to the answer were definitely in the book
Yes.
at that point. Is that true based on what you know?
Yeah, he said that it should be intuitively obvious to a casual observer. It was not obvious to me, but fans had figured it out. It is one of the people that had been put forth as a theory. The thing about that is, by now, everyone has been put forth as a theory. But when I read that, I was not shocked. I was more, oh, so they're right. So the ones there, it had been guessed. I'll say that's really all I can say. Right.
After reading through the notes, is there anything that you would have done differently?
That's hard to say. You know, I have been given the chance to do things as I wish. Meaning, if I feel that a narrative structure needs to be different for the integrity of the story, Harriet has given me creative control, and I am allowed to change those things. I still have to convince her and Jim's assistance, but I am allowed to write it as I need to, and then convince them. I haven't really had to do much of that. In most cases, what's going on is Robert Jordan will have said, I'm going to do this somehow, I don't know how, in the notes. Or he'll say, I'll do this or this, maybe. And I'm the one making calls on those, and then writing it, and if the text justifies it, then they say yes. If I do some of these things and they don't think it works, they say try again, or convince us better, or things like this. And so there's really, I mean, there's no place where I'm going to sit down and say, no, I'm going to do something that's wrong for the story just because there's a line in the notes that say, oh, maybe this should happen. But at the same time, if Jim said it, my default is we do it. And it's his story, not mine. And so there's a balance going on between those, and I'm trying to do what he says. That said, the one thing perhaps I would not have done would have been, there is a spanking scene.
Best thing in the book.
And I may have approached that differently if he had not instructed it to go that way. It is the right scene, it is part of the world, but I'm not really a spanker. So,
Why does the missus want you to come home?
what's that? We're going to change this topic. So really the answer is, there haven't really been those conflicts yet.
The pacing of this book is significantly different than the previous couple. Are we going to see the same sort of pace on the next 2?
You should. You should see the same sort of pacing. One thing that's going to be different from this book and the next book is, without naming any names, there are certain side characters that do not appear in this book that people have been waiting to see for a while, and we'll need to get back to those. I wanted this book to be very focused on 2 specific characters, and I wanted to keep that drive going. And so in the next book, we will be a little more distracted because we're going to need to jump to some of these people to find out what's going on. And they're people you probably want to see from and haven't, and are maybe a little annoyed that you didn't. And so we're going to do that. That's probably going to drive the length of the next one up because the that the main characters, two in specific that didn't get dealt with as much in this book, and one who didn't appear at all, will need to have full plots in the next book. And then we will want to touch on still the two that appeared in this book, and then I need to add in all these other people. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep it as focused as this one, but there's a whole lot of stuff happening in these last three books. A whole lot of stuff. And we're fulfilling prophecies at a breakneck speed. Sometimes, literally, wasn't it prophesied that Gowan might break Egwene's neck? Yeah, it was. So anyway, no pun intended there. Chris. Yeah, you're Chris, right?
Mike.
Mike. I know.
Regarding the artwork, I have a certain appreciation for the whole series as one as the artist did it, but I'm just curious why that particular scene? How much control you had over that, or do you know?
Wait, which scene specific?
Just that, the actual cover art.
The cover art. Oh, how the cover art happens. Cover art is a really odd thing. How it happens and how you end up with cover art and things, it's really hard to say. It happens differently for every book. I did not pick the scene, Harriet did. Then she asked me for a description of the scene to give to the artist, whereupon we took the scene itself and then me giving some guidance, and we handed that to the artist. And then the artist gave back something that we didn't think accurately portrayed it. You may have seen the thumbnail of it on the internet. Whereupon we went back and said, well, and the well was done by Maria, who is Robert Jordan's assistant and continuity expert. And Maria then spent a lot of time going over with the cover artist. For the second two covers, they wanted to get them going more quickly because Mr. Sweet, who does the covers, is getting on in years, and we just want to make sure we have those covers ready so that he doesn't retire on us or something like that. So I actually was asked to provide two scenes from books that weren't written yet, which I did. And gave suggestions that these would be the scenes I would pick, and they said okay, and gave those on. So I haven't seen either of those yet. I hope they turn out all right. All right, back here.
Have there been any scenes that were forced by the notes that he left that you, Brandon the fan, had a difficult time writing?
Were there any scenes left by the notes that Brandon the fan had a difficult time writing? Yes and no. I mean, there are some difficult scenes in this. People are going through some very emotional times, which Brandon the fan does not want to see people have to go through. But as a writer, one of the things you learn very early on is how to separate the fan from the craftsperson. And you need to do that because you need to know what's right for the story, and that's not necessarily always what the fan is demanding. If the fan were in charge, then the story would involve Narg. Narg, do you guys know what Narg is? Narg is the Trolloc who spoke to Rand in book 1. Narg, no kill, the only talking Trolloc. He's become a fan favorite. Brandon the fan would have put him in as a cameo or something. Brandon the craftsman says, Brandon Finn, that is hokey and dumb. You're not going to do that. Things like that. And so you learn to balance really quickly. If you don't, then you end up with books that are just full of fan moments and no real substance. And so there are opportunities, there are things that can happen. Meetings between certain characters that have been waiting for a long time that is appropriate to include, and the outline has room for them. And in some places I've added those in because the outline has room for them, in other places the outline instructed me to, and things like that. But in no case am I really just having a hard time writing it, because once you get into the writing mode, it's time to craft something. Okay, Paul.
Is there anything that you're explicitly not supposed to include in the books, or
Yes. Yes, there are. In fact, a lot of the work that Robert Jordan did, he did on the ending and on the state of people and the world following the ending, whatever that may be. And there's very detailed notes. And in some cases he says, this does not get resolved, this does not get resolved, this does not get resolved. My default is to resolve something unless he is said not to. I'd like to be able to release eventually which ones he said no to so that people could stop throwing eggs at me at the end of the series. But those who poke around the internet know that he had planned to write another trilogy set in this world, involving some things that I can't give specifics on without giving spoilers for the last books. And some of those things, he was not planning to resolve because he was going to take them off and talk about them on his own, in their own stories. And so there are some things like that, and some things he just says flat out, this does not happen. And I read those, I'm like, oh, they're going to hate me. They're most